John Busbee with a Culture Buzz, and just like clockwork, I have the distinct honor of sharing with you folks what's in the newest issue of the Iowa History Journal. This has become one of the preeminent publications that happens in the state of Iowa, and quite honestly, there are a ton of people that subscribe to this publication outside the state of Iowa because they love staying in touch with Iowa, a state they either move from or they have connections with, family in still. They just simply love good history stories. Iowa History has been doing this for a long time, and so I get a chance to share with you folks what's going on. And I promised you last conversation that we would pick up where we left off. Jerome Thompson is back with us. He is one of the most celebrated historian people in the state of Iowa. And when he decides to write on an interesting story, he finds something that's absolutely fascinating. And I'll let you folks hear from him directly, how he got this kernel of an idea to plant into the soil and sprout into a beautiful two-part story. It's called The Cow War of 1931. What you need to know is www.iowahistoryjournal.com. That is where you can find out all the outlets where the publication is sold. And quite honestly, if I were you, for the modest price of admission, you can get 6 issues a year shipped directly to your mailbox before any of the outlets get them, so you can be talking about the good stories before any of your friends who aren't subscribers can. That's the way to do it. Just go to iowahistoryjournal.com. Well, it's almost like a Saturday serial in the old weekly days, Jerome. We left people hanging in the precipice of wondering where the story was going to go just a couple of months ago, the Cow War of 1931. So I'll let you set it up, how you discovered this incredibly fascinating story, and then what we're going to learn in the part 2.
All right. Well, one of the things I do in retirement is that I volunteer at the Iowa Gold Star Military Museum. And a year ago last summer, there appeared on my desk a banker's box full of National Guard records for 4 different deployments that they had in the 1930s. The first one being the Cow Wars, as it was called, both in the press and by the National Guard. And Governor Turner activated the Guard to go first to Cedar County, where farmers were protesting the mandatory requirement that their cattle be tested for bovine tuberculosis. Now, bovine tuberculosis, to just recap, is a disease that can be transmitted to humans through consumption of meat or milk. So it had been, before it was mandatory, it had been strongly suggested. But farmers, particularly in eastern and southeastern Iowa, where there was a lot of cattle raising, were maybe skeptical of the science. They were, in today's terms, vaccine hesitant. But more than anything, they were protesting a mandate. And that's where the National Guard came in to assist veterinarians in carrying out the testing of cattle. And the National Guard was called out first in Cedar County because of strong, even armed protests that kicked the veterinarians and even some local law enforcement off the farms. And the Guard came in and enforced the testing. Well, from Cedar County, the governor directed the General Findlay to move to Muscatine County, where there was some other protests going on, and to Henry County, to Mount Pleasant, where there were a number of instances where the Guard helped the veterinarians carry out their duties. What is kind of an interesting thing is that by the time in November, when the troops were sent home, the cost started to amount up and the cost of the cow wars was about $176,000 by the time everything was added together. And in today's money, that would be about $3.7 million. To compare, in 2024, when the Iowa National Guard was activated to go to the Texas border, that cost about $2 million.
Wow. I mean, those are incredible numbers, and this is why that story ballooned into something that had to be a two-part story. Talk about what you're going to be presenting in this second part in the November-December issue of Iowa History Journal, if you would.
Well, again, I go into detail about the deployment in Muscatine County, where there was a very, very large protest where actually the protesters who were coming from other counties were dispersed at bayonet point. I also get into some of the, along with the cost of the cow wars, what contributed to that. You know, it was in November, and things were starting to get kind of cold and rainy and muddy. They actually had to bring in, really, the horse cavalry because the roads were muddy, and they had difficulty getting vehicles through. And sometimes the mounted troopers turned into be cowboys because they had to go round up the cattle for testing. One of the things I found interesting was going through the bills and to see what kinds of things were purchased. There were over 67 loads of firewood that were delivered to the camp outside of Burlington. And those costs and others included things for bread, milk, fruit, groceries, lumber, hardware, gasoline, and other kinds of services such as rent on the fairgrounds where the troopers were placed in their tents, and medical bills. And some of the things that some of the troops showed had accidents because they were wrestling and playing football. They were treated for pneumonia, different infections, tonsillitis, trench mouth, venereal disease, and even an appendectomy. But, despite the fact that the troops were armed with rifles and machine guns and bayonets and pistols, there was only one gunshot wound during the entire operation. And that was accidental when one soldier was turning in his .45 at the end of the day and had ejected the magazine but had not emptied the chamber, and he shot himself in the leg.
It's amazing because, as you've described, tensions were extremely high with this entire incident. There's something about when you try to tell Iowa farmers, even back then, what they need to do and what they're going to do, there's a little resistance from the Iowa farmers.
And that's true. The previous March, before all of this happened in the fall, there were thousands of farmers that went by train to the state capitol in Des Moines to protest the law and see if they could get it changed.
That's amazing. Folks, this is the story, part 2, which helps anchor the new issue of Iowa History Journal. Go to www.iowahistoryjournal.com to make sure you get in the know what's happening. You need to get this one. The cover art is just absolutely beautiful. It's about a story, Christmas in Iowa, and the cartoonist Thomas Nast created this image that you will recognize right away. Also in this issue, you will find out interesting things about the Dragoon Trail, which, if you've traveled anywhere in central Iowa, mostly kind of along a southeast and northwest through Des Moines and the river there, you will probably see these Dragoon Trail signs. Well, you're going to find out what they're all about. And in addition to that, there's a story about a famous Hollywood actor, Harry Langdon, you may not have known about. And Harry Langdon was often referred to in the same breath as the other great stars of silent film era that transitioned into the modern day film world. But Harry Langdon was from Council Bluffs. And so anytime you think of the famous actors like Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton and Harold Lloyd, you really should think of Harry Langdon. So find out about that, because that's what Iowa History Journal is about, is to kind of keep you informed and to have fun in the process. I have a feeling that the Gold Star Museum is an absolute treasure trove of unheralded stories that, if people haven't visited there, give a little bit of a plug to what that museum is all about, if you would.
Well, the Gold Star Museum traces Iowa's involvement in military history from before the Iowa Territory up to current events, both in the Middle East, and the Gold Star is soon to be developing an exhibition about the Cold War. And so things are always changing. When you're mentioning, John, that there's a sort of a gold mine of information in the archives, I've actually now covered 3 stories for Iowa History Journal from the archives of the Gold Star.
Lucky us.
And, John, I think you're being modest when you're talking about Harry Langdon because you contributed that article, so don't sell yourself short.
It was a fun story to write, and I do have the distinct honor and pleasure to every so often pen a story for Iowa History Journal as well. I guess I get a lot of the celebrity stuff, and it's always interesting. I know that you and I have enjoyed Iowa History Journal and the stories they offer ever since they started publishing. And it's a great way to really make history come alive. Anything from the Cow War of 1931 to Harry Langdon, the movie star, to Iowa's Dragoon Trail, and even Christmas in Iowa. That's just in this current issue. Jerome, thank you so much for what you have contributed. It's a growing legacy because you're not about to stop. You've got this insane curiosity in you that simply says, I've got to keep learning more about this stuff.
I have to go find my new muse.
Well, we'll wait while you find it and we read about it sometime in the future. Thanks so much for your time.
You're welcome, John.